Oh, I think Melbourne fans will be very disappointed on how we played. So they should be, so are we. So we get judged on how we performed yesterday, and it was well below standard. So we've got to make a greater effort next week. I mean, how we performed next week will be a really determining factor, and we've got to be consistent in our effort, as we've been trying to address on a weekly basis. So next week's performance, actions is what we're after again next week.
Dean, have the expectations on this group, maybe before the start of the season from outside the club, maybe been a little bit too high? You made a comment last night on the couch, how long it took the St Kilda, Geelong, Collingwood to get to where they're at. Do you think maybe the expectations of fans and the media was maybe too high for the Demons going into the year?
Oh, I think when you look at the successful clubs and where they started, with Collingwood, from 02 and 03, and then how long it's taken for them, the Geelong scenario, and certainly the St Kilda situation as well. So, it does take a bit of time when you're rebuilding a club, when you're rebuilding a list, but every game we're getting experience, and every game our guys are getting challenged. And as I've said before, we've drafted a lot of players, and we've got to start playing them to get the continuity in the games. Well, that doesn't guarantee them a game, because they've got to earn the right to play the game. But teams look at 60 to 80 games as being a real benchmark for consistency of performance. We don't want to wait for that, though. We want to instill in our players right from the start, in their first 25 to 30 games, that there's certain standards that need to be met, and at the moment we're not meeting them.
What does that performance yesterday do for your chances of retaining your job?
Of me retaining my job? Well, I'll get judged by the rest of the year, and the board will make a decision when it's appropriate, so it's in their hands.
What was the determining factor for the blowout in the last quarter? You talked a lot about the forward press, how Collingwood delivered that.
Yeah, but the last quarter, the disappointing thing about the last quarter is we allowed 8 goals to be kicked. That's got nothing to do with the press. It's got more to do with effort and intensity and the fundamentals of the game, which we performed well below par in the last quarter, and we allowed them too many uncontested possessions, and they made us pay, and they made us look very, very ordinary in that period of the game.
Dean, are you sick of selling the actions message every second week sort of thing? You talk about the roller coaster a lot. It seems like you're having to sort of sell the same message.
But that's where we're at, though, really. That's just the reality of it. I can put a different spin on it if you like, but next week the next week we have to perform, because we were really poor yesterday, and that's a situation we find ourselves in, and our players need to make a really big statement next week, but it has to be a consistent thing, and we've got to get out of that situation we find ourselves in from a week-to-week battle. We can't continue to rely on last week's motivation, and that's where our group is, and they're fully understanding of it, and we want to we need to keep working at it and make sure that we change that direction.
Fremantle's most predictable players in the midfield are out. Sandilands and Mundy, they're the most predictable players. How do you go about preparing for them this week?
Oh, well, look, this might sound a bit, the same message, but contested possession and, our clearances have got to get better. And really, we've got to go inside 50 from stoppage more often. And the number of turnovers, and we've reviewed the game today, and I think it was over, might have been 51, 52 times when we turned the ball over in the middle of the ground between the arcs. That's just too many. And against, obviously, one of the best teams in the competition, you're leaking goals because of that. And we put our backline under enormous pressure because of the types of turnovers we created through the middle of the ground. So we've got to rectify that, and we've got to get our stoppages right, because that's the two areas that we've really fell down in badly yesterday against an outstanding combination.
Is that from overuse, the turnovers, just overusing them?
Yeah, some of it was certainly from overuse, but it was also, we had times where we had the ball in the middle of the ground where we were in an uncontested situation, low pressure, and we still found a way to turn the ball over. I think that's the most disappointing thing, and that reduces the number of inside 50s that you can produce. I reckon we had probably in the second quarter, I think there was on six or seven occasions we turned the ball over mid-forward going inside our forward 50. And against a very good team, they made us pay, and that was 6 of the 52 or 3 that we had during the game.
With all the talk around Tommy Scully, Dean, how are you rating his performance, how he's handling the situation, the pressure?
Tommy's handled the pressure well. He's only just back starting to play now, Tom. But look, he's a professional in his attitude, Tommy, and his second game. These first couple of games when you've come back are always going to be a little bit scratchy, but he'll only get better as the weeks go on, Tom, and there's still a lot of footy left in him for the rest of the year.
Joe Rivers disappointed in David Schwartz's comments on the weekend about Tom?
About how he's saying he's 98% confident that he's already signed?
Well, speculation will grow anyway. I've spoken to Tom, and I can only say what I know, and that is that every time I've spoken to Tom, and I speak to him on a regular basis, I see him as a long-term Melbourne player, and I think he will be. I'm convinced he will be.
I know you said it's not a distraction, but how can it not be? I suppose just with
to who?
To the club. After everything we saw
Well,
last year with Gary.
a lot of players go out of contract. A lot of players that are out of contract. That's just part of the business. So Tommy's handling himself well. The players get on with being professional footballers, and it's just the way of that's where the market is at the moment. So it's not a distraction for us. It's not a distraction for the players. Tommy's getting on with playing, and we need to get on with playing as well.
Jared Rubin's copped a fair whack in the papers today for his performance. Seemed to be a little bit unfair considering how quick the ball was coming in. How did you rate his performance on Cloak and then for the rest of the game?
Look, I thought Jared was a victim of our poor pressure through the middle of the ground and our turnovers, like I've just mentioned. I think Cloak had, I think Wood handball over the top. I think he marked the ball in the square on his own. I think Jared got outmarked on a few occasions, but Jared didn't have one of his better games. He was in very good form last week, but if you don't have enough pressure through the middle of the ground, and if you turn the ball over like we have, our backs, particularly our back six in this case, when you're playing on the best forward, like Jared was, he's going to get exposed only because of our lack of midfield pressure through the middle of the ground, and that's something that we went through the review today. But
Dean, Steph Martin's been progressing really well, but where's Mark Jamo at?
I reckon, I think Russian might be 50-50 for this week. He'll join in training and do a lot more running. He's been doing some running the last couple of weeks, so he's probably a little bit ahead of schedule. So we'd like to think he'd be in consideration this week.
Fremantle have, without Sandal, that's just sort of been using Zach Clark as a third man up.
Yeah.
How do you sort of combat that? Would that make it even more vital for you guys, or important for you guys to get back J-Mark?
I think obviously when you've got an All-Australian ruckman who hopefully can come back and play, that's obviously a big fillip for us. I think young Clark's shown a real mobility around the stoppage, certainly comes in second man. So I think McVeigh at times on the weekend was playing on him and tried to stop him from being second man up. So look, he shows a little bit of class. So we've certainly got to be aware of that. But again, that's the whole stoppage situation that we went through yesterday that we were poor at, and we've got to make sure that we need to have effective stoppage players for us and try and make theirs ineffective as much as we can.
And Valentine and Mundy out now, so where do you make where they're at from?
I saw him play at Hawthorn. I saw him play the MCG a couple of weeks ago against the Hawks, and they were very, very good. Yeah, but if you take any club lightly, if you talk about the blokes who are out of the team rather than the blokes in the team, then you're not rating them. We certainly respect what they do. Fremantle, obviously, they're a team that's had injuries during the year, but they've seemed to perform. They've seemed to really play particularly well. And like I said here at the G a couple of weeks ago last weekend against the Hawks, they were very, very good. So we'll have our work cut out, but if we can be consistent in our effort, then we've got a great chance of winning the game.
Have you had anyone looking at Barlow, and do you expect him to play?
I think he played reserves 2 weeks ago. He had a full game for Peel, I think it was, on the weekend, and played particularly well. So, look, when you come back from that sort of injury, so he's probably played 4 games at Waffle and a half in the reserve, so he's had six quarters of footy. So, look, he's a very, very good player, and whether they take the risk and play him, we'll have to wait and see. But, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see come selection time. So, wouldn't surprise me though, because he's a very good player.
Dean, the risk could prove a distraction in the next 12 weeks. Would you like to bring your contract talks forward with a view to coaching on? Would you easily just nip it in the bud and progress it?
We'll just wait till the end of the year. I mean, my future and the contract's in the hand of the board, so that's where it sits.
About the big Russian, you're talking about him coming straight back into seniors. You're not talking about AFL.
If he's available to play this week, I think he'd be more likely to play with us. But hopefully he can get through the week of training. He's a guy that that bigger player in the goal square is a long target for us, which we're sort of missing at the moment. There's no doubt about that. He gives us a long target. He's a very good mark. So if he can come up, obviously the last couple of weeks he's been training reasonably well. He's been jumping. His lateral movement's been good. His agility training's been good. So he's showing all the signs that if he can get through training and gets through without any sore spots in the recovering situation, I'm sure you'll be a chance to play this week. But we've still got a main session to get through.
The magnitude of your defence, Dean, seems to have blown out. So when you get beaten badly. I know yesterday was perhaps at one end of the spectrum, but on average it's 7 or 8 goals when you get done.
Yeah.
I'm wondering whether the resilience is or something's changed. You were probably more resilient group last year. in that sense?
Oh, I think we had more. I think our consistency of effort last year was due to more the continuity of the players playing in some of the positions last year. But look, our concern really is, and you make a good point, that the last quarter, we kicked the first goal in the last quarter and they kicked the next 8. We had a really tight third quarter. You know, it was a battle. There was not a lot of scores had. At least we were competing hard. Second quarter, we had opportunities to go inside 50, and probably mid-forward is where we fell down, where our chain broke down, where we turned the ball over, and that cost us. But the last 8 goals was very disappointing. And generally, the last things you think of is the last quarter, the last 15, 20 minutes of a game. And that was very, very disappointing from a club point of view, but certainly a big day for us. And our Melbourne supporters will be walking away thinking about the last 20 minutes and not worrying about anything else.
It's a pattern, though, isn't it? It's not just yesterday, it's a pattern.
Well,
You get beaten badly.
The inconsistent performances is more on the scoreboard. Yeah, absolutely.
Are you encouraged by the form of some of your VFL players, like Dunn, for example? You know, you've got a few forwards and defenders who might be in a position to play this week.
Yeah, Dunn was good. Pettard was good. Bates' performance was, you know, still pretty consistent about a VFL level. Matty Warnock was good yesterday. So there's some guys there who've been consistent and been good in VFL. So you know their form takes into consideration for this week's game. Absolutely. Yeah, Gala had to get a game in on the weekend, and you know he'd missed almost 4 weeks with an ankle. He'd had 2 weeks, or a week and a half to 2 weeks in a boot. He'd only really had 2 weeks of running, so he needed to play a game on the weekend. So yeah, he'd be under consideration.
How do you rate Jack Ross's progression? He seemed to be targeted a little bit yesterday physically by some Collingwood players. How are you seeing his improvement?
Oh, I think his improvement's been steady for this year. You know, if you compare it to last year, so some further improvement for the rest of the year, and I'm sure Jack will continue on his rise. Yeah.
Forward or back? Do you know where?
We drafted him as a forward, so absolutely. We need a bloke up forward who can mark and kick goals, and he's a very good decision maker. Kick inside 50, but that bigger, if it's a Mark Jamer or you know, a bigger presence full forward will certainly help Jack as well.
What did you think of Brad Green's game yesterday?
I thought we had probably 3 or 4 players who played okay, and I thought the rest of the 18 or 19 were well below par, and I think Brad would have been in one of those 19, so he was one of many. To single out an individual is your prerogative, but mine is to suggest that we had 19 players, 18, 19 players who did not deliver when the game was there.
Is it too simplistic then to say that Collingwood's younger brigade are more physically imposing than other clubs? I mean, put it simply, it looks like the younger players are bigger and fitter. Is there a conditioning issue that you guys aren't catching up with in terms of the way they're preparing versus other clubs?
Is our conditioning
as good as Collingwood's?
Is our conditioning as good as Collingwood's? We've improved it. Our conditioning fitness is better than what it was last year. We're bigger, we're fitter, we're stronger than last year. That's what our stats tell us, and we regularly look into them, so we can only build on what we were last year. If you can tell me what Collingwood's all their stats are and what their running and everything is, that'd be great. Then you could compete. You could compare. So we can only compare on what we've done last year, and we're ahead of last year.
Just going back to Brad Green, do you think he's handling, well, how is he handling the pressure of the captaincy this year?
No, Brad's been. I mean, it's a great step up for Brad, and he wants to play well every single week, like all players. So, like I said before, he was one of 18 or 19 who really played below par. And the thing about Brad is that he's very very honest with his appraisal of his own game, and he's very disappointed. And as a captain of the club, he'd love to have had some of those opportunities again right now, but he can't. He works incredibly hard, and I'm sure that next week he'll be out there working twice as hard to try and make a point. He's a very competitive beast, Greeny, just like Jared Rivers is. I mean, those guys are 100+ game players, and particularly Greeny's over 200, so they've got a great deal of pride in their own performance.
Is it a bit harder though?
Last one.
Is it a bit harder though for him? Obviously last year best and fairest being able to play a little bit more free rather than having to think about leading the team.
No, I think Brad takes on all challenges, and one of them is one being captain and 2 performing well. So I think you'll see a very competitive person. We see it every single week. He is resilient, and he does put a maximum effort out every week. So he'll show it again on the weekend, and if he gets his opportunities, I'm sure he'll take them.